Morning live. We're on. We're good. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you're in. Welcome, all you beautiful people. I can say that with confidence because as of right now, there's nobody watching. Uh, Apologies for being. How late am I? Oh, 9 minutes late. I was just on the phone with a lovely man from Quebec wanting to do some custom products, some custom. He's a stone faceter. Hopefully he's not going to watch this because I'm going to make a lot of stone dealers angry, probably. It's not my plan, but you know, the reality is what it is. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Good morning. You know, whatever, wherever you are, whatever time it is, whatever time you're watching this. My name is Mark. I'll be your SilviaFindings live stream presenter today. I wanted to talk today about, and this is just going to be a super informal thing. It won't take long, maybe 10 minutes. I tend to ramble, so maybe a few more minutes thing. I wanted to talk, give it a little bit of tips for buying gemstones. Now, I'm gonna come right out and say this. I've been doing jewelry for 30 plus years, something like that. Pretty much longer than I've done anything except breathing. Yeah, and a few other things, but neither here nor there. And I can honestly tell you that I've seen a ton of gemstones. I've seen a thing, and I was a retailer, owned a huge bead store, co-owned huge bead store in the Seattle area for 20-something years. So I've seen a lot of gemstones. I've seen a lot of gemstone pricing at different levels, at the wholesale levels, at the retail levels. And I'll tell you right now, there's no rhyme or reason for pricing. So I'm not going to talk about prices at all. I'm not going to talk about value at all. It's not the thing, because I've seen garnets, which I think are like the third most common mineral in the world. And I think I used the word mineral wrong. It's whatever it is. It's a stone, it's a thing, you know, it's a whatever. Garnet. Yeah, everybody knows what garnets are. And I've seen garnets that to me were virtually indistinguishable, and one was like 10 times the price of the other. So it's so subjective. And I mean, obviously a lot of study has been done on diamonds, because that's like the single most artificially inflated valued stone. I'm also going to get in trouble when De Beers is going to knock down the door here and take me hostage. But yes, I'll say it. Diamonds are so ridiculously priced, you know, and they're artificially inflated. You know, it's all marketing. There, it's out there. Finally, someone had the nerve to say it out loud on the internet of all places. Colored stones are obviously way chemically more interesting to me. Anyway, I think. But here's the problem. Diamonds, because they're so valuable, because the market deems that they're so valuable, let's say it that way, kind of thing, because it just, anyway, neither here nor there. They're treated with such care, and you know, like, you'll never find a really, well, not never, because I have seen them, but you'll rarely find really badly cut diamonds. You know, I mean, it's just when you compare it with you know, colored gemstones, you know, and which is not to say that all colored gemstones are bad, or that colored gemstones aren't as good quality cuts as diamonds are, because I've seen some that are unbelievable. But you do tend to see a lot more variety in colored stones. And this is the problem. This is the biggest tip. First of all, the biggest tip is, if you don't have one of these, right, a caliper, electronic caliper, right, let me just, oh, right, you can see the thing. What are you doing? What are you doing? This is like the single most important tool, thing to own if you're doing this hobby, this whatever you want to call it, a hobby, this business. If you're doing this at all in any kind of seriousness, a good caliper is like the single most important thing to buy. If you don't have one, stop this video, pause it, and go out and buy one. Get on, open another window on your phone, go down to Amazon and find one. A good, you can get these. They're not stupid expensive. You know, you can get a pretty decent one for, you know, $30 Canadian. You know, maybe $25 US. You know, under $50, let's say. Unless you're getting like a crazy one. You don't need them to be that precise. 2/10, 2 decimal places into a millimeter is the best. This is yeah. So I don't know if you can see that, 0.01 of a millimeter. So that's 100th of a millimeter. You know, when you're getting that precise, not so important. But once you do have one of these, you will be shocked, I say, to discover how irregular and how imprecise most gemstones are, colored stones, cabochons, whatever. You know, because they start out as a rough stone, and then, you know, faceters who are cutting stones, they're trying to preserve as much of the rough material as possible, right? To make as big of a stone as possible so they can make a, you know, a price for it. And, you know, so you'll always end up with things that like, let me just back up. So when you see listings for gemstones, they'll almost always have like whole number millimeter for the diameter. Not always, but most of the time. It'll say like 8x10 oval. And if you took a caliper and you put a caliper on it, you'll end up seeing that it's actually something maybe like 8.2 by 9.7. And not really. And they just kind of round up or down to make it sound good. 8x10, you know. The carat weight will always be super accurate because that's normally what they're gauging it on. They're not selling it by the millimeter size. You know, it's not like all 8x10 stones are whatever, $20. You know, it's so much per carat, and then they weigh the stones. Which brings us to another problem that you have, and that is the size of the pavilion, right? Let me just switch this around and do a little. So when somebody buys a gemstone, can I make this go any lower? No, I always have this trouble. Right, when somebody who's just like a little super thin opal, when somebody buys a stone, the first thing they do that I always see people do is they put it on their fingers like this, and oh, look, it's so gorgeous, yay! But I mean, that's only telling one facet of the story, pun intended. You see what I did there? Facet. Anyway, so it's only telling one facet of the story. You know, that's how that's going to look that way. But you know, for the end user, great. That's all you need to see. That's all you need to worry about. But if you're going to be the jeweler who's actually trying to set this in a setting, and you're buying settings to go with it, the pavilion size is probably more important than the actual diameter, the actual perimeter diameter size of that thing. Because let me just do a quick little drawing. Yeah, I have little guide marks on this thing here. So most stones, you know, faceted gemstones, have that top part called the crown, right? The very top flat piece is called the table. And then the bottom piece is called the pavilion, this part. So these are all facets on the top here. Those are terrible facets. And this is also faceted, you know, whatever, to do whatever. Different facets for different, you know, kinds of stones. Diamonds, like I said before, you'll almost always see them in just about the same proportions, right? If you have X perimeter length, right, the girdle width, which is this, the girdle, the the depth, or I should say the entire depth of the whole piece is always about approximately, so let's say approximately 60% of the width. So if this stone were 10 millimeters wide, right, you would want this to be about 6 millimeters deep, would be the depth of that thing. Average, I mean, they're always a little bit different kind of thing. And this angle from the girdle to the pavilion is always around 43 degrees-ish. 43-ish degrees or so. 41 is fine. 45 is getting a little big, but anywhere from there to there, right? And you can do the math. If you have this works out to about right. Now, the problem with colored stones, let me just back up. So you have this kind of traditional brilliant cut shape that became popular, I don't know when, whatever it is. I'm not going to do the history of diamonds for you, but some Joe figured out that this is with, I think there's 25 facets in the top and 33 facets in the bottom. That gives you some, refraction, because light, bounces down through the thing straight into the table and bounces out at, diffuse angles and then gets caught. And then the idea behind this, the facets in the crown and the facets in the pavilion and the pavilion angle, is most of the light that hits this stone will be reflected back out and give you that sparkle along the, reflected out at the facet. So you get all this weird diffuse, directions of the light coming back out. But that's what gives it its sparkle, right? Now, people who are cutting colored stones, won't always adhere to that. See, like this is really, crazy curved, pavilion. It's probably dimensionally right. Like it's probably 60%. The height is, well, let's try it. Let's figure it out. Let's look at this. So how wide is that? I know this is some weird number. Oh, 15 millimeters. 15 millimeter wide, so 60% of that would be 7.5, 8 thing, 9.5, 9.5 millimeters. I can't do that math in my head, but that looks about right. That's about 60%, right? Say 50% of 5 is 7.5. 7 is 6, 8.1. So that's a little bit deeper than you would normally expect. It would normally be about a millimeter less, but it's not egregiously bad. Now, the problem is that most, do I have one here to look at? Let's just use this. Most, findings that you buy, the seat here is designed for those ratios, that 60%, ratio for the diameter. Now, obviously, round stones are going to be a little bit different. Triangular stones, equidistant like this, they should be about the same. If it's an oval, it might be a little bit different along the long axis than the short axis. But overall, it should be about the same, the same concept. And these are all designed with that angle in mind, right? So if you have a stone, because stone dealers or stone cutters are greedy and they're selling these stuff by the carat, so they're going to cut these and colored stones are really bad. When you see this, they have these huge pavilions on them. Sometimes they're so big that you can't actually set them in a normal setting like this. So my biggest tip for purchasing gemstones is to have a look at the pavilion angle, right? And if this is, crazy, has a crazy curve, like if the bottom of the stone, let's do this, because it'll probably still have the crown sort of thing. But if it's something huge, like that, and that's not exaggerating. I've seen stones this big, obviously this is going to sit so much higher in a setting than it otherwise would, because normally the traditional shape of the stone would be something like that. So your setting is designed with, where's that thing? So the settings are designed with this this upper bar, the seat, what I call the seat, right? And you see how this is kind of beveled, so it's angled down. The seat is meant to be slightly smaller than the outside diameter of the gemstone, so that it sits underneath the perimeter of the stone, so you can't see the silver of the stone when you're looking at it. When you're looking at this with a stone inside, the only thing you should be seeing is the bail at the top and the prongs, you know, coming out the over onto the thing. The rest, if you're looking straight on it, you shouldn't see the rest of the setting. Now, the problem with a stone like this is that the seat is designed for an angle something like this, so that the bar comes around somewhere like this, right? If the bars of the seat, right, are only this wide, then this stone is going to have to sit something like that much higher, right, to make this level, right? So it's going to have to sit this much higher in the setting. And then you end up with a thing where if the prongs are designed for this to go over here, right, this prong is not going to be tall enough if it goes here. Does that make sense? So big pavilions are a big problem. That's my biggest concern with gemstones. And that's, I think, is about the biggest tip that you need to know. You know, you can see lots of things on lots of places on Facebook. I think, I don't know, I personally think it's always better to buy gemstones if you can actually see them, you know, if you can actually feel them, if you can actually hold them up in your hands, because I've heard so many stories of people who order stones, and this is not to say that ordering from overseas is bad, because there are lots of great dealers, you know, that you can, they all have Facebook accounts that you can order from, you know, but shows are starting up again, you know, maybe hopefully by middle end of the year there'll be a lot more gem shows that you can get out and actually start buying things. But you know, if you are buying something from a dealer, an online dealer, and it's a particular stone, it's a thing, you know, ask to see the pavilion height, you know, and ask if the dimensions that they're using, the perimeter dimensions, if those are measured with a caliper. And if not, ask them to take a picture like this with a caliper so that you can see, right? Like this would get sold as a 15 millimeter round. And, you know, 1/10 of a millimeter is probably fine for most 15 millimeter settings, right? You probably get away with that. But if it were like 15.3, then boy, you might start having a, you know, difficulty. So you gotta have a caliper when you're ordering your stones. Hopefully you have that with you when you go to a show to buy something, because if you're buying stones and you're not worried about how to set them, like if you're going to make your own settings, doesn't matter what the stone is, right? But if you're going to be buying settings, like you know, what they call semi mounts, or you know, pre-made settings, boy, it's really important that this is good. Like for something like this is 11 by 11 millimeter, right? So 11 millimeter triangular stone. And to be fair, we started redesigning this particular style of setting. This used to have this support base plate on the back that doesn't really add any structural support, so I'm not really sure why that started out that way. But you know, I've since I've been working here, I've had them redesign them, so now they're being redesigned with a little more curvilinear sides and without that extra weight that, I don't know, it doesn't really do anything. Anyway, what was my point? Oh, so my point is, you could probably get away with, you know, 11.1, 11.2 millimeters on this, but if it were 11.5, forget it. You know, it would be too big. You could go, if you had a stone that was like 10.5 or bigger, you could probably get away with the seat. My only concern with that is if it sits low enough in the setting that you can see the seat around the outside edge of the stone. Some people don't like that. Some people don't mind. You know, for me, it's a deal breaker because it's not what I'm looking for when I'm looking traditionally at settings, right? But you know, a lot of people don't mind. That's neither here nor there. I guess that depends on the person. So that's it. You know, that's my only tip. Have a look at how thin this stone is. This is like so thin. The table at the top is pretty wide, right? And the crown angle is really, really shallow. So the distance between the girdle and the table is really, really small. And the pavilion is also really, really small. So this is like way smaller than a traditional thing. So, I mean, this is great. You can use this for just about anything. You know, because the pavilion is not sticking out and making a big issue. Now, this is obviously going to be lighter than a lot of stones. For opals is not a problem because you're looking, not looking at what's the word I'm looking at? You're not looking about worrying about the translucence of the stone. You're worried more about the sparkle, the flash, the chatoyance. That's a word. Look it up. Right. So it doesn't really matter how thick this is. But if this were like you know, an amethyst or an aquamarine, you know, unless it was a really, really dark stone to begin with, it would be almost transparent. It would be almost like a crystal, slightly off-color crystal. So that's why a lot of stone cutters will make crazy, deep, wide pavilions to make the stone, the color of the stone deeper, darker, you know. And you know, here's the thing that always bugs me about stone cutters. They'll do weird things like you know, having I don't know if you could see that, but there's the table, under the table, you know, the facets are kind of boring. It's almost, you know, straight through. But then on the sides, you have a ring of facets against facets. So the girdle facets and the table facets, or and the pavilion facets, work against each other to create this crazy matrix. It's not more sparkly than a regular old brilliant cut is, but I guess it's interesting. But this, every time I look at something like this, it's like, who are you cutting this for? If you're cutting this for another stone cutter, you know, great. But 99% of the stone buying public are not looking for that kind of thing. They're just looking for a sparkly stone that's pretty. I'm sorry, I know that's not what you want to hear as a stone cutter, but you know, you can make whatever fancy schmancy stuff you want for your own jewelry, but if you're, you know, putting stuff on sale, you know, the most traditional cuts, there's a reason why the most traditional cuts are the most popular. You're always going to sell them more than you're going to sell weird cuts like this. And it also alleviates the issue of trying to find a mount for it after, you know, because when we were at gem shows, and we do a lot of gem shows, hold on, let me turn this around again. We do a lot of gem shows, or we used to before the whole global pandemic thing and the world fell apart. But they're starting up again. Anyway, we would constantly get people who, you know, they stop at a you know, gemstone dealer and they buy a stone and they bring it to us and they're like, oh, I have a thing, oh, it's exactly 6x8, you know, or close enough. And they're like, okay, let's find a 6x8 setting for you. We'll find a 6x8 setting, and then it won't fit. And they'll be like, what? And it's because then you don't want to say, well, you know, if you don't want to blame the gemstone, even though it's the gemstone's fault, you know. I guess the more sophisticated you get, the more I think a lot of people just want to buy the setting, and they just want to buy the stone. They want to put it together. They don't want to have any, you know, go through all kinds of crazy tools. They don't want to get a flex shaft. They don't want to get, you know, files and carving tools and polishers and all kinds of, you know, metal smithing, you know, accoutrement. They just want to buy the one thing, you know, get a pair of pliers, a stone setting pliers, or a bezel pusher, you know, to do their stones, and that's it. And unfortunately, that's not going to work for a lot of the stones that you buy. So my two biggest tips for gemstone buying is definitely get a good pair of calipers. Um, because if I had to tell you the number of times I've sent settings to a customer in some far-flung part of the world, only to have them get the setting and say, what the hell, the setting is not the right size, you sold me the wrong setting, you know? And I was like, well, wait a minute, let me double check. And then when I check the setting, it's the right size. And the difference is that the stone that they have is not the size that they were sold, right? Because stone dealers, round up or down the sizes. So with a good caliper, you'll never have that problem. You'll always know the exact size of your stones. So when you're ordering semi-mount, unfinished findings to set your stones in, you'll know what you're getting. So those are my two tips. Beware of the wacky pavilions. It's just a huge issue, and make sure the measurements of your stones are dead on with a good pair of calipers. And that's it. That's all the tips I have for you. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about stone pricing and stuff because that's just weird. It's just weird, and there's no really good way to put your finger on it. The prices are whatever people are willing to pay for them. So if you see a stone and it's $150 and you don't care and you think it's gorgeous and it's beautiful and it's speaking to you, it's calling you, buy me, buy it. It's worth $150. That's what it is. Obviously there are, I don't want to get on the side of that people are just making up prices willy-nilly, because there are stuff that's less expensive, stuff that's emeralds is a good example. Boy, I've seen some emeralds that were so badly occluded that it's like it's almost like, is it transparent or is it like milky green, like aventurine or something? And then I've seen emerald that is virtually flawless, and the difference in the price between the two things is obvious, right? But other times, the prices are not so obvious. And I don't want to lay this on the head of unscrupulous gemstone dealers, because it's not always an issue. Oh, totally forgot. I want to talk about cabochons too, besides cut stones. So let me just move this down again. When you're buying cabochons, and cabochons are almost worse because cabochons is where almost all stone dealers, or stone cutters, I should say, where they start their craft. They start cutting cabochons, and then they love it so much that they start getting into faceting, which is a little more technically challenging than cutting a cabochon. Because when you cut a cabochon, right, you just have it like a slab, of stone. Let me draw that. And then you cut your shape out of the piece, and then you dome it, basically. Obviously there's a little bit more involved in that, but I think when you're looking at cabochons, and I wish I had pulled one out to be able to show you, you've got to look at the front obviously is what you're looking at when you're buying, like, oh, that's so pretty, that's great, okay, super. But how is it going to be, how are you going to be able to set it? And you'll find cabs in just about 3 different edge geometries is the word I like to use, right? The most common and the best are the ones that are slightly domed all the way around. Now this is a terrible drawing, but right? So it's tapered all the way out to the edge. So you can have a prong that's this long, you can have a prong that's this long, you can have a prong that's that long, and they'll all work for that thing because you push that down. It doesn't have to be super tall, right? Then you'll have cabs that the edges, right, that started out on the edge of the slab, they'll just dome the top of that instead of going all the way around. So there'll be like a flat edge, and then there'll be a dome, and then there'll be another flat edge again. Sorry for my terrible drawing, but doing this up in the air instead of flat on the table. For something like this, you've got to have a prong that's tall enough to go past the thickness of the thing and onto the domed perimeter of the stone, right? Then you have this other weird thing that I've seen that I call it like a mushroom cap, where you see that kind of curve like that. For something like this, you also have to have a super tall prong. It's got to go past the widest edge of the stone, right, onto the top of the dome. And then sometimes you'll even have cabs that are so thin, right, that you don't need very much of a prong at all. You can probably get away with just like a dot pushed over onto the outside perimeter of the stone, which would actually look kind of cool. So that's what you're looking for when you're looking for cabochons, when you're buying cabochons. Find ones that are tapered all the way to the edge, that don't have flat edges. And again, this is just to make your life easier when you're buying settings for the stones. Because all the settings that are designed for cabs are designed with prongs that are more or less built for this kind of thing, kind of a medium length prong. And if you get ones like this, you got to try it in the setting, because you may end up with a prong that's not tall enough to go that thing. And if the prong only goes this high, you might be able to push this onto the side of the stone, but it won't hold it in place, and the stone will eventually pop out, sort of thing. So, and if you have a cab that's like this, you can cut the prong down and file the ends to make them beautiful. I did that in another video, but that's basically what you're looking for. Some people don't consider cabochons to be gemstones, but I think that's silly. I think they're all stones. They're all beautiful. Just because one has more facets on it instead of a dome. And that's it. That's all I'm going to talk to you today about. That's your gemstone tips. If you have any kind words for me, you can send me an email, mark@canadafindings.com, or you can message me in the comments. If you're commenting on Facebook, somebody will get them to me, but I don't read Facebook, so neither here nor there. And if I'm honest, I don't really watch the YouTube videos after they're done either. But I will read the comments, definitely. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you didn't like the way I talked about stone sellers being only concerned about carat weight and not really so much about anything else, it's just the truth. Sorry, it's the life the way it is. In the meantime, we're not going to be doing a live stream next week or the week after, I think, because we're at shows both weekends. We're doing a show in Port Alberni this week. I know, right? Port Alberni. A little town on Victoria Island. But it's a good show. We've done that every year for ages. Obviously not the past couple of years because of the pandemic, but this is my first show since the whole pandemic thing started. Oh no, we did one in Calgary, but that was just it's kind of a fever dream in my mind. Anyway, I'm just babbling now, so take care of yourself, take care of the planet, take care of your mental health, and we will see you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, in 3 weeks. Just keep an eye on the social medias, and we'll always send you an invitation when we're going to do it. If you have any suggestions for little topics you'd like me to go over to talk about, let me know in the comments, and we will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.